Always true.
Well, welcome to New York's City Hall. It's where the mayor is based. And 100 days ago, it was a very different picture here as thousands of people gathered round this building to welcome Zohran Mamdani to his new job. It was his first day as mayor. He is 34 years old, the city's first Muslim mayor. And we're here to catch up with him on what those 100 days have been like in his first sit-down interview with Al Jazeera. Thank you for having us here today.
Very welcome.
100 days, it's a marker that you've set, but so many politicians I meet see it as something more of a curse than a blessing, because it gives the opposition a good chance to say what you haven't done. Are you worried about this 100-day mark?
I think it's an opportunity. I think you have to embrace these kinds of markers because it allows us an opportunity to provide a glimpse into what these 4 years will be like. And as we're coming to that 100-day mark, we've really sought to show that we embrace this understanding of no problem too big, no task too small. So in the same period of time that we've secured a $1.2 billion agreement with the governor to deliver a path to universal childcare, 2,000 seats of free childcare for 2-year-olds this year, 12,000 next year, a seat for every 2-year-old by the end of 4 years, is also the same period of time where we fill 100,000 potholes. These are all part of the same thing.
And that money, the 1.2 billion, came very quickly in the first week.
Day 8.
So that
yes.
was ka-ching first off. But I mean, is it easy on the campaign trail to promise, but the reality is that much harder to deliver?
Well, I think it is difficult, but nothing that is worth celebrating should be easy. These are the things that New Yorkers need, because we're talking about a city of immense wealth, the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, where 1 in 4 New Yorkers are also living in poverty. And after housing, it's childcare costs that are pushing New Yorkers out of the city. So when we ask ourselves, how can we make it easier to raise a child in the city? The answer always comes back to childcare, because it costs a family about $20,000 a year per child. And so when you make that free, you transform what's possible in the city.
So there's nearly 500,000 under 5-year-olds in New York City, but just 2,000 places coming with this first tranche that you've announced. Is it enough? I mean, will people actually be impressed by that?
I think this is the reason that this is worth celebrating is that it is the first step, that we have 2,000 seats this year, 12,000 seats next year, and then a seat for every single 2-year-old by the end of 4 years. Senator Elizabeth Warren often talks about childcare as infrastructure. I think it's an important way to think about it, because when you are delivering these seats, you're also building out new relationships between the city and vendors and contractors, whether they're providing the services at a home-based setting or a center-based setting or school-based setting. We cannot just snap our fingers and have the infrastructure ready. We want to build something that's durable and that lasts.
Now, you talked about potholes.
Yes.
I mean, potholes is something that just annoys so many people.
Yes.
Whether you're a cyclist, whether you're a car driver, whether you're just a pedestrian putting your foot into something wet.
I'm still waiting to find a pro-pothole person.
You've not found one yet.
I can't find them, if you're watching.
And again, I mean, you've made it look easy. 100,000 potholes filled in less than 100 days. How is it possible to do that? Because there's a government back home where I come from in Britain that I'm sure would like to know, and right the way around the world too.
Well, we have a secret sauce here in New York City, which is our municipal workforce. There are more than 300,000 New Yorkers who work for this city, and they are the beating heart of everything that has been impressive about these last 100 or so days. We've seen when it comes to the 100,000 potholes, these are the hardworking men and women of our Department of Transportation. I actually was just on Staten Island with them to fill that 100,000th pothole in ourselves. And what we've learned is that this is the most potholes that have been filled in this city in this period of time for over a decade. And it's not the end of their work. After they finish filling potholes, they're going to get to the structural cause of a pothole and repave more than 1,000 miles of roadway across the city, which is the distance between New York City and Miami.
So it's small things that in turn can make a big difference?
Yes, and I think if you want someone to believe in the promise of a transformative vision of universal childcare, of fast and free buses, you have to first deliver on the thing that diminishes their faith on a daily basis. It may not seem like much, but if you are driving your car or you are riding your bike and you hit the same pothole every single day, Why would you trust city government in its ability to deliver something that you have never seen at that scale when it can't even do this? So for us, it really gets back to this tenet of what was initially called sewer socialism, what we now think of in some ways as sidewalk socialism, that to deliver on the most expansive part of your vision, start with the things that are causing people to lose their faith.
So you can fill potholes, and you've proved it, but you can't fill the budget black hole.
That's
and
a
that
good
is,
segue.
I mean, that is seriously big, right?
Yeah.
That's more than $5 billion
Yes.
that you are missing to run this city at the moment. Does that keep you up at night?
It is definitely a source of anxiety for any of us who are here in city government, because this is the largest fiscal deficit that our city has seen since the Great Recession. And frankly, it dwarfs even that. We have brought that deficit down to $5.4 billion. And it is now the subject of conversations we're having with our partners at the state level in Albany. We're encouraged by those conversations, and we've put forward a vision, which is that we need to get out of a structural crisis such as this with a structural solution. And that means taxing the wealthiest New Yorkers, the most profitable corporations, that little bit more, and ending the drain that has long characterized the city and the state's fiscal relationship.
So those wealthy people, they see it as a war on wealth, that you want to take another 2% for those who earn over $1 million. Big companies would see less in their profits. You're happy with that?
Well, I would say that this is also what it means to provide world-class services in a world-class city. We are so thankful for everyone who calls the city home. We want to make it a place where you can afford it no matter how much money you make. And part of that is ensuring that we resolve a fiscal crisis without putting it on the backs of working and middle-class New Yorkers. And as you said, we're talking about increasing personal income taxes by 2% on New Yorkers who make $1 million or more a year. We're talking about the most profitable corporations. This isn't, somebody who is making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year, or a small business that's just about breaking even. This is about those who are making enough money that they can afford to pay a little bit more so that the city can be on a firm financial footing.
And you've just announced today that 62% of the people living here don't really meet the true cost of living in their incomes.
That's about 5 million New Yorkers. This is the most expensive city in the United States of America. And we have to take every single tool that we have to make it more affordable. Because what we've seen is that in that same report, it revealed working class New Yorkers are 4 times as likely to leave this city than wealthy New Yorkers. For all of the conversation about a potential exodus as a result of changing fiscal policy, there's a real exodus of working class New Yorkers that has been taking place for years. And it's also one that has disproportionately impacted certain sets of New Yorkers. From 2000 to 2020, 200,000 black New Yorkers left this city.
And also your frontline workers, your healthcare professionals, your paramedics, your police, your firefighters. I mean, all of these people are leaving the city because they can't afford to live here.
And you can feel it when you go around the city. I'm currently getting allergy shots so that my wife and I can get cats. And every week I go for 2 shots, one here, one here. And the other week I was in the elevator going up for the shot, and a nurse across from me let out a deep sigh, and I asked her, how's your day? She said, it's good, but it's not over yet. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, when the shift is done, I have to get back home. I said, how long is your commute? She said, 2 hours. And I asked her where she lived, and it was out of New York State. That's how far people are traveling to find a place that they can afford to rent. They're living in Connecticut, in Jersey City, they're living in Pennsylvania because they can't afford a place here anymore.
And that's not sustainable, is it? Because, I had a friend I was speaking to about this very thing, needed elder care for his mother. They had to come from 2 hours away because of that very reason. They can't afford to live in this city. It's going the wrong way. How do you turn it around?
Well, I think at the core of it, you have to make the focus of your work delivering for working class New Yorkers and making this a city that working class New Yorkers don't just build, but can also live in. Because if we do not do this, we will reduce the city into a museum of a place where working class people could once live. We want it to be a living, breathing testament to the possibility for working class New Yorkers.
So should the big banks, the big corporations that headquarter here, should they be paying more?
I do think so. I think that the most profitable corporations, the wealthiest New Yorkers, can afford to pay a little bit more. And they can afford to do so not for the sake of it, but because this money will then be put back into that same city that we all live in. And that is at the heart of this. When we as socialists believe in the importance of public service and public goods, we know that at its core is a recognition of the importance of public excellence. We want to make clear that every dollar in our city budget is a dollar being spent at its best possible use. We want to convince people to stay here not through a rhetorical debate, but rather through the services they see. And potholes are one example of that. The other example here is childcare, it's housing, it's public transit.
But you were saying that you haven't got the money yet from the state, and that you need permission from them, in effect, to raise these taxes. Can you persuade them that that's going to happen? I mean, if not, you're stuck. You are really stuck at the moment.
I'm encouraged by the conversations we've been having with the state. The state has a budget that is technically due on April 1st, but those conversations tend to continue, and that's what's happening right now. And what I'm heartened by, frankly, is that for a long time, the relationship between the mayor of New York City and the governor of New York State has been one that has been quite tense, especially when you look at the predecessors in these positions. The relationship I have with our governor is one that's far more productive, and I've been heartened by the fact that our governor has made a commitment already for $1.6 billion to the city's fiscal health, as well as that $1.2 billion towards the universal child care plan.
Tell me about your relationship with the president, because that's an important one too. You have the second hardest job in America.
John Lindsay said so, yes.
He has the hardest job in America. Does he help or hinder you?
You know, I've been appreciative of the conversations I've had with the president. They've been ones that have been productive and ones that have focused on the city that we both love, which is New York City. And in those conversations, we are candid with each other about places of disagreement, of which there are many, but also looking for where are the places that we could work together. In this last meeting that we had in the Oval Office, I presented the president with a plan that would build the most amount of housing units in a single development since the mid-1970s. This would be 12,000 homes in Queens. It would generate more than 30,000 jobs. The president was interested. That's a conversation that continues. And in the midst of that, I also made clear to the president my continued opposition to ICE raids, the nature of them as cruel and inhumane, and the fact that the morning of that meeting, ICE had detained a Columbia student. And after I spoke with the president about that, I mentioned a few other individuals who'd been detained in or around Columbia over the last few months and years. He then called me 30 minutes after the meeting and told me that he had made the decision to release that Columbia student. She is now released, as well as 2 additional cases which have had action.
So you have clout with the president. He's listening to you.
Well, I can just tell you that we've had those conversations. I've been heartened by the results.
And do you trust him that he will deliver for New York?
I think we have to continue to have an active conversation. And my job as the mayor of the city is not to agree with the president, but it is to advocate for this place that we both love.
And when you next meet with him, what will you say to him about his leadership at the moment and what you're seeing of the direction he's taking this country, specifically with the conflict in Iran?
Well, I've made clear my very deep opposition to this war in Iran. It is an opposition not just of a procedural nature or a political nature, but frankly, of a moral nature. We are speaking about a war that has killed thousands of civilians, a war that is deeply unpopular across the city and across this country, not just because of what we are seeing it result in, but also because it is utilizing tens of billions of dollars to kill people, money that could otherwise be spent on making life easier for people across the city and this country. And the very things that I often speak about that are necessary for working class New Yorkers that we are told are impossible or unrealistic, they would cost a fraction of this tens of billions that we're seeing. And
does that frustrate you, that you're watching this money, $900 million a day being spent on the war, where you have projects which cost much less that could make a huge difference? Does that frustrate you?
I think it should frustrate all of us. You know, I mean, Tupac said it decades ago. It continues to be true about the fact that we always seem to have money for war, but not to feed the poor. And that is not the way that politics should be. That is not what Americans want politics to be. And at the heart of any war is a dehumanization. And it is a dehumanization that is never confined just to the war. I spoke recently to a young Muslim woman who had been attacked on a subway platform. And she told me that before her attacker threw her to the ground, the first thing he told her was, "I wonder how many Iranians we killed today." That's the dehumanization that we are allowing to proliferate in our country.
I want to ask you about that racism and that kind of nastiness that you are seeing and witnessing, that you, I know, have witnessed. Where is that narrative coming from? I was in New Jersey filming last week, and a man told me that my country, the United Kingdom, was being taken over by Muslims. I had a frank and pretty deep conversation with him, couldn't persuade him otherwise. But where is that narrative coming from?
You know, I think that there is a real rise in not just misinformation, but also a hysteria that comes through what our social media algorithms incentivize and also what our politics has begun to incentivize. And I do not let it dissuade me from the job at hand. I do not let it distract me from the fact that most New Yorkers do not feel this way. It is, however, something that has become a part of our politics. And to be candid with you, it is not exclusive to any one political party. We have allowed this kind of bigotry to permeate across the entirety of our politics. And there have been too many who have sought to characterize their embrace of this bigotry as if it is the embrace of a realistic, necessary kind of politics.
And do you think this conflict is driving it even more? I mean, it almost get a sense from some of these Pentagon briefings of a religious war that's going on.
You know, I can just tell you that my heart broke when that young woman told me what her attacker had said to her. And it broke because she was someone who has always known herself of belonging to this city. And the rest of the phone call, she used it to emphasize the importance of the City University of New York and advocating for increased funding. And I so loved it because that's what we should have been speaking about. But instead, here was a young person who had been reduced to their religious identity, who had been attacked because someone had learned through our politics that Muslims could be considered as if imposters, as if an imposition on this place that we all call home, when in reality all of us belong here. This is all the home for all of us.
Do you think you can change that in 4 years?
You know, I think it is a hard task to take on bigotry, but I think it's a necessary and an urgent one. I think that what really gives me a sense of inspiration is the fact that I am not the first looking to tackle that kind of bigotry. There are so many who have done so for years in this city, and I can learn much from them.
Let's think about the advice that you might want to be giving the Democrats right now, because we're heading towards that midterm, and it seems that it's a party in the wilderness largely at the moment, not quite sure where to go. Have you set an example and a pathway for them to follow?
You know, I will leave that to others to come to that conclusion. What I will say is what I've learned over this course of time being in office. Chief among it is the fact that the only real majority in this country and in this city is that of the working class. And too many working class New Yorkers, working class Americans, do not see themselves and their struggles at the heart of our politics. When I walk around this city, the questions people ask me are about how they can afford housing, childcare, public transit, even.
So does it need a new party for them to believe it? I mean, because you've set a new path. But if the Democrats don't follow what you've done, do you think perhaps a new party is required to be the opposition in this country?
I think that there is enough hope within the history of our existing party. When I think about the greatest mayor in New York City's history, Fiorello LaGuardia, his relationship with FDR, the New Deal, all that it presented then, we are missing that now, and what we need to do is to ensure that this is a Democratic Party that doesn't have to look to the history books to find a sense of ambition that matches the scale of a crisis, but a party that can finally look at working class Americans struggling and say, we actually have something that we're fighting for, not just something we're fighting against.
Can I just ask you about media ownership? A lot of the big media companies centered here in New York City, we're seeing, you know, they're being condensed in terms of ownership. The Ellison family taking over what seems to be a huge number of big American broadcast brands. Does that worry you, especially since they have such close links to Israel and to Netanyahu?
I would say that any kinds of corporate consolidation is worrying for me and for so many Americans across this country. It's a consolidation we don't just see in media, but we see it in so many different sectors of our lives. And within it, it is the suppressing of the promise of competition, and instead the feeling as if there is no room not only for a New Yorker to be able to breathe when it comes to seeing more options, more ideas, but also for a small business that's looking to make its way. It seems as if they're being pushed further and further into the edges of the marketplace and of our society.
And with that in mind, too much power going to those tech bros, those big businesses that are siphoning billions out of this economy to the very top.
I think what we are looking for in this country is a greater meaning for the word democracy. For too long, we've talked about it as a value or an ideal, and we have lost sight of the reflections of so many leaders from decades ago who would speak about the fact that faith in democracy diminished not because individuals changed their mind about the importance of it as a political system, but because they were tired of being hungry. They were tired of dreaming of liberty on an empty stomach. And we have to understand that if we allow for the concentration of wealth and power to continue at the pace and scale that it has, we will find more and more Americans who are disillusioned by the politics around them because they see it as having an irrelevance to any of the struggles in their own life. What we're looking to build here is a city government that New Yorkers can turn to and say, that is an institution that cares about me, that cares about my problems, and is delivering on it.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Real pleasure.